Hello, and welcome to Temple of the False Pod, where decks are not optimized, but are plays sure as heck are fun. I'm Andy.
I'm Bruce!
And welcome back to whatever episode this is. This week is, I think this is episode 8, so you know what that means. It's a deck tale. Wonderful.
One of us brought a deck.
I brought a deck. It was me. But I'm
It was
ashamed
you.
of it. I'm just kidding. I'm not ashamed of it. I brought
Not
my
be ashamed
first...
of it?
Yeah. I brought my first deck in. And I know what you're saying. Last season I brought my first deck in. That was like my first deck that like people helped build it, right? It was like a collaborative process. There's clear influence from the outside. This was like my first deck. I built this from the ground up in terms of deck list. And there were minor changes over the years that I had it. And we'll get into that for sure. The things that I wish I could change about it now. And I guess I can if I want to rebuild it.
Yeah.
But first things first, my commander right here is Drana, Liberator of Malakir.
Yep.
Black 1 for 2/3, legendary creature, vampire ally. This is an ally deck. Just kidding. It's a vampire deck. Flying first strike, whenever Drana, Liberator of Malakir deals combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on each attacking creature you control. So the idea here is that you go wide, attack, Drana hits first strike, and then for normal damage, everything else a little bit bigger.
Yep.
Pretty straightforward. The idea behind this deck for me was, hey, I get to build a vampire deck. It's just startlingly easy. I think it really kind of went to show me how with certain, I guess, creature types, having that kind of deck, like a typal deck, can be fairly straightforward, but to like make it your own is that extra challenge to like make it not just the vampire deck,
Right.
to make it your vampire deck. And I think I did an okay job.
I think typal decks like this are a great way to sort of set a deck on some rails to help guide a new builder. And like you said, the first deck that you put together solo, it just makes sense. This is a great way to lead you down particular paths. So I think this is always a good call for newer players.
Yeah, and that's not even to say that typal decks are like strictly, for newer players. Like if you bust out, if I were to bust out this deck now, I don't think anybody would be like, or like think less of me for playing a vampire deck.
I mean, the last deck I just built was a Beeble Oathbreaker deck.
Oh, look at you, Bruce. Know what we're talking about next?
A little bit different.
So I just figured I'd go through this fairly quickly. I mean,
sure.
With deck tales, it's not necessarily about the cards in the deck. It's more about the idea. It's about the deck building process and any stories that kind of came with it.
Right. Andy, before you go any farther, I know that there are some cards in here, or there are some cards that aren't in here that are obvious that most people probably would have put in the deck. I'm assuming that there was either a dollar limit that you were looking at cards, or it was cards you already owned, or something along that line.
Yeah, I would say all of those things. Yes,
okay.
I think because this is my second deck, there was like definitely some things that kind of were dollar limits. I don't have Urborg in here, Tomb of Yawgmoth, because of that. It's a $25 card.
Right.
Or at least at the time it was up there. I think it's been reprinted a few more times, and it has come down to probably like 10, 12, which still is a hard ask for me.
That's still not cheap.
I think this was maybe the deck that made me consider my limit to be $5 most for a card, and even that like have like a limit to those. Like I can't have every card be $5.
Right.
I think if you look at this deck in terms of price, let's see.
I was looking. I think it's $188 currently.
Yeah. And I think the most expensive card in this deck may be Whip of Erebos at $12 currently.
Okay.
Or no, Bloodline Keeper is $24, which I
Okay.
think it was less than that at the time.
Right.
But Vampires is just one of the classic Magic types, and you will always get more. And I think that's the nice thing about typal decks too, is if it's an established type, you will always, like, most sets will have a card or two for you to like filter in or out and kind of keep moving, keep updating your deck.
Sure.
And I think this is like a nice starting point, at least it was for me, to like look at that. So I guess a background, just to kind of give you an idea of when I built this, because it was one of my first Commander decks. I started playing in the beginning of 2018, I think it was, when Dominaria came out.
I think so, yeah.
It was either that or beginning of 2019. Let's see. Yeah, April 2018. So
There we go.
I came into the game around the Rivals of Ixalan time slot. My first release was Dominaria. So you can kind of see here there's like some cards from that era, from that set.
Yeah.
But then you also have some cards like Forever Young from Eldraine, which I think just filtered in over time. But yeah, I mean, I guess we'll get the elephant in the room out of the way. This deck, and I know we talked about this a few weeks ago, this deck has 33 lands in it. Like I said, it was my first deck. If I was to build this again, I'd start with 40. I'd keep a lot of these utility lands or these like, non-basics in here. But I would definitely bring up that basic count. Basics I currently have at 27, which seems like a lot. But considering I didn't really understand a lot of the use of non-basics, I think 27 is great. I would probably bump it up more just to get that even 40. So yeah, getting that out of the way. I understand too low of a land count, just period. The 33 is unacceptable in any deck. Bring it to 40. But I'm still terrible at making cuts. I think that's a pretty universal experience. But definitely, like, early on, it was harder for me to make those cuts, and to cut 7 more cards from this, I think even still I would have a bit of a hard time. But I think it's something you got to do. Practice makes perfect.
Yeah.
Even so, I have 11 mana sources outside of lands, but 2 of those are like one-time things. We've got Bubbling Muck, which helps with till the end of turn.
Yeah.
And then we have Dark Ritual, which is a one-time thing, but that can help you get Drana out turn 1.
Right.
The beautiful nature of having a 3-mana commander in a single color is that Dark Ritual, turn 1, Drana, start building her up, get those +1/+1 counters on her.
Right. As long as we're in the mana group, Bantu's Monument, I think, is just huge in this deck. All black creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Forget about all the rest of it. Just ignore the rest of it. That alone. Almost every single card in this deck is Vampire. And they're all black. This is just a significant savings. People forget, like, with the Monument and the, what's it called, Jet Medallion. You know, if you once you've reached the point where you're looking at playing 2 spells in a turn, I mean, if you've got Bantu's Monument and 4 swamps, there's a real good chance you can start playing 2 cards per turn, just because of the cost savings, and that's huge. So many of the other mana rocks, it's like you're getting 1 mana, and that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But with this one, there are plenty of turns when you're getting way more than just 1. So, and you've got all the swamps. Your need for more black should be pretty minimal. So, I think Bantu's Monument is a great call in this deck.
I love the monument cycles. Obviously, I think that they are, just generally speaking, like cheaper versions of the medallions, which obviously with the medallions, it's any spell of that color.
Right.
But with this, in other decks, especially 2-3 color decks, like they hit, gold creatures, they hit that color. And then also the second line, which is you essentially drain your opponents.
And that fits with the theme really well with the vampires.
That hits theme. It also hits on any creature, not just the black creatures, which is cool. Granted, I don't have non-black creatures in here, so
I think Joyrus Familiar is the only.
And I mean, like, that's kind of where this deck kind of flowed from, was that I knew I had Bantu's Monument. I love that card. Drana, I was like, all right, I'm going to keep an eye on vampires because I know that they like to fly, which will make me more aggressive to attack, make me more likely to go all out and have all of my creatures get those +1s, because the +1s only go on attacking creatures.
Right.
And I
think it really encourages you to just go for it.
Yeah. And so then if I'm going down that route, maybe I have a whole section dedicated to anthems and pumps or caring about counters. So I've got like Ascendant Evencar, Bad Moon. Bad Moon's fun because it's symmetrical. Ascendant Evencar is fun because you're not going to have non-black creatures, even if it is the other part is symmetrical. I mean, they're both symmetrical, but it's like a mini Elish Norn, but also still 6 mana. I've got a lot of like targeted removal, which is fine. I mean, it's black, that makes sense. I don't have any board wipes necessarily, and that's again fine. It's not like you need them in your decks, but like I like some of the removal that I have on theme, like Drana, Calastria, Blood Chief, where you're pumping mana into her to like give her a bigger power to get rid of any potential blockers or any current blockers. Honestly, the flexibility there is nice. But then I've got things Go for the Throat, great on theme. Murder is fine. It's expected. But then I have things like Viper's Kiss, which I love. So for those who don't know, it's a single black enchantment aura from Theros. It says enchanted creature gets -1/-1, and its activated abilities can't be activated. So this is either removal, period. Like maybe something has a 1 toughness, happens all the time. Or it's soft removal and you're just shutting down their activated abilities, which is excellent.
Honestly, it's ideal. Because a lot of times you don't want to kill. Like a creature with an activated ability, you kill it and then they just bring it back. And this one, no, there's nothing to bring back. It's still there. It's just a little bit smaller and can't actually do what you wanted it to do in the first place.
And at 1 mana, fantastic.
Yes.
And I have all of these removal, but like I then look at like my card draw. I have it listed as card advantage because not all of it's draw. I've got Underworld Connections. This is the kind of thing that I want. I want to pay life to draw cards.
Yeah.
Doing it at the expense of also having to tap a land, not great. But it gives me that like flexibility to do it end of turn.
Yeah.
Siphon Mind is a one-way or a one-time draw 3 cards maybe.
Right.
Sign in Blood, draw 2 cards once. Phyrexian Arena, another great card that just kind of increments that value. But like this deck needs I know that this deck needs card draw. There have been so many games where I'm like, oh sweet, like I've got all this discounted black creatures. I play down all my creatures and now my hand's empty. Somebody else wraths the board. Oops. And obviously you could look at that and say, well, then slow down. Don't play out everything. But this is an aggro deck.
Right. Well, I mean, if you're going to slow down, then what is Drana doing?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. No, I completely get it. I was going to save it for later, but it just seems perfect right now. Vanquisher's Banner. What is it? You're going to get you get creature pump, and card draw from it. And I know it's not, I think it's 5 mana to cast. Your creatures are all getting +1/+1, and you're drawing cards. Vanquisher's Banner's not in here because I know you haven't updated this one in a little while. That's all. And I think this would be an easy add for this deck.
Yeah, I think kind of honing in that obviously the 40 lands, honing in the mana package in itself, maybe get less of the one-time effects, especially in card advantage areas, so that I can really start like being able to recover from from
the wraths and from that kind of thing. Yeah.
Which I do have a number of things in my recursion package.
Yeah.
But it is some of them. A lot of them are like one-time things. Forever Young does it once. March of the Drowned. I liked this card in my pirate deck. It's fine here. 1 mana sorcery. Put creature from graveyard into hand. Pretty good at 1 mana, honestly.
Oh yeah.
Recover, same thing, but it replaces itself. And then obviously Whip of Erebos is faux recursion.
Yeah. I really like I like Demonic Vigor and the parallel with Viper's Kiss.
Yeah.
One gets +1/+1, the other one -1/1. Yeah, I know it's not a perfect parallel, but they're both 1 mana auras, and it's like they just, they kind of balance on either side of the scale. I really like the way that laid out.
It was definitely like a thing where I saw that my deck wanted to play a lot of these bigger creatures, and I wanted to balance it somehow. I wanted to be able to do things without having to pay 7 mana for Butcher of Malakir, and that was all I did that turn, right? And then, obviously, Exsanguinate.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I've ever won with Exsanguinate. I think I had this in here because I was like, it's doing the vampire thing.
Yeah. You've got the Exsanguinate Sanguine Bond combo in here. And I know that when this deck was put together, that was not something you considered at all. But
no.
It goes. I
don't
think I've ever seen you play them at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that combo is not necessarily infinite.
No.
But yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I definitely, like, the first time I played Sanguine Bond, I remember somebody asking me, like, do you have a way to go infinite with this? And I was like, I have no idea. I am new to this game. I've been playing for 4 months, I think that's the thing with this deck, is that I think I was almost there in a lot of cases. I think that this deck should focus on either the counter synergy or the vampire synergy. And I think it can do well enough, or it can do both well enough, because vampires inherently are like +1 counter fiends.
Yes. Yeah.
But then I kind of just like have a lot of things dedicated in this deck that are just like, it's a black deck. That are just kind of
I like Vampire Hexmage. I think Vampire Hexmage has only gotten even stronger since this was started. +1/+1 counters are rampant. They're all over the place. There are so many new types of counters. It deals with all of that. It's, my particular play group, the Ozolith, wipe all those counters off the Ozolith.
Even better.
Yeah.
It completely hoses absolutely any Planeswalker.
Yeah.
And like, God, if they are daring enough to play a Planeswalker with this on board, and then they don't immediately activate it, you have priority as soon as they do anything, that you can sack it and get rid of their Planeswalker. And even if they do a thing with it, you still have priority at some point that you can just get rid of their, maybe they're savvy enough to like recognize this and maybe politic with you. And like, hey, if I don't drill you into the ground with value, will you not kill my Planeswalker? And then obviously you have that detonation for when they're about to ultimate it. Or if it comes down to just the two of you, then yeah, you can do that. And this card at 35 cents, especially post War of the Spark, needs more play in general, but also like even beyond hosing Planeswalkers, just a great utility for everything we were talking about. Ozolith, which would work great in this deck. Shield counters. If you have something that's got 3 stun counters on it, don't even have to worry about it anymore. It's great. This is like a ultimate toolbox card at black.
Right. Those indestructible counters.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah.
The things that when I was organizing this deck before we recorded into categories so that I understood where I was coming from. I had like a little category called Slight Synergy.
Yeah.
Basilisk Scholar. Love this card. Works obviously wonders with any of my creatures, but especially Drana, because Death Touch and First Strike is amazing. Because nobody's going to block unless they absolutely need to. So, like, very good in terms of, like, creating more evasion for Drana, who already has First Strike and flying, and really getting through and getting those +1 counters on everything else. Equally as good as Fire Shrieker. And both of these, I feel like, hold the same place in my heart in terms of, like, I want to put these in every one of my decks because the value you get off of them is amazing. But Fire Shrieker, especially in this deck, put it on Drana. Drana hits, puts every +1 on every attacking creature, and then on normal combat does it again. And obviously, the math kind of implodes on itself, but like it really does add a lot of counters very quickly.
Yes. To be clear, that second group of counters doesn't count for combat damage for those creatures. It just means the next turn they're already that much bigger. You're getting 2 counters instead of 1, and it's that piles things up real fast. So.
Yeah. What I think is interesting too with Drana specifically is that if you're only attacking with Drana, you've got Fire Shrieker on her. She attacks, she hits for 2, she puts a +1 counter on it, and then she hits for 3. You just did 5. Now she's got 4 power because she added another +1. And then next turn you do it again. You're doing 4 and then 5, so that's 9. So 9 and 7. You're already at 16 commander damage. Through 2 combats. And so that's just one more hit, and there they go. I think the card that stands out of this deck most is Una's Blackguard. But I think that's because of the metas that I've played in, whether it's your play group or just like anywhere else I've played this deck, where it makes sense as a card why it's in the deck, but I feel like it just doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't create the experience with this deck that I want. This deck's not trying to make people discard, but that's all this card does. So for 1 and a black for a 1/1 creature, fairy rogue flying, each other rogue creature you control enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. So with this deck, there's only one other rogue, so the first part's not super relevant. The thing that really comes in play is whenever a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it deals combat damage to a player, which is going to be almost always. That player discards a card. If you hit with 6 creatures, they're discarding their hand, which is oppressive. Granted, maybe they should block at that point, but
with Drana, they're getting hit first, and then they discard a card, and then here comes another one. Even if you're only swinging with 2 creatures, if one of them is Drana, they're doing first strike damage. They deal that damage first, and then there's another one. Even with just 2 creatures, they're discarding 2 cards. That is nasty. That's a best case scenario kind of thing.
Yeah. Overall, I feel like it's an easy takeout. Like it does what it wants. It synergizes well with the commander, synergizes well with the rest of the deck, but overall it just kind of it doesn't create the game that I want, which is taking everyone's life and giving it to me. Like that's what I want out of the game. I want vampire role play as a deck. And so like I could go through all these cards and figure out like, is this adding to that? Me sucking their life out. And some of the times it's a or some of the times it's it makes my creatures do it better. And that's pretty much what it is.
Yeah, that's not bad either.
So I think kind of starting to wrap this up, the things I would change, 40 land. Let me say it again. 40 land.
Yes.
The other thing, more card draw. Not just cards that draw you cards, but things that generate that momentum of reloading your hand.
Yeah.
I could keep in, Sign in Blood, Vampire, sure. But I think overall finding cards that maybe you've never heard about, finding cards that do that more than once, or ways to recur that.
One of the obvious ones, but again, this is a dollar and cents thing. It doesn't make sense when you're looking at it dollars and cents wise. Bolus's Citadel. You're already gaining a ton of life with this deck. If all you're having to do is pay life equal to the mana cost of the card on the top, you are essentially drawing cards and getting them out onto the battlefield right away. Bolus's Citadel it gives you the card advantage, and it's
something to do with that life total.
Right. And I mean, loosely, it's kind of mana ramp because you're using your life instead of the mana. I think that's an easy add-on. But again, Bolus's Citadel isn't cheap. I believe it's well over $10. I think.
Is it? I've got a couple. But that's the thing is that I do have a couple. So it's like, depends on which one you want. The old frame Love Your LGS one is $450 right now.
Okay.
The normal War of the Spark one is $10. So
yeah,
it's not like super expensive, but it's not cheap for sure.
Yeah.
It's also a 6-mana artifact, so like you got to get there. It also gives you a way to end the game if you can't get through with combat, because a lot of people are going to start putting up walls. People are going to create the defenses that they need that they stop you.
Yeah.
Bolus's Citadel lets you take 10 life from each player.
Yeah.
Like that. And that's before any other dice triggers or anything.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much you can do with this deck. I think this is a great starting point, except for the land count. So I'm gonna put the list in the description.
Sure.
So if any of you are looking for like an easy, quick, so budget commander deck to start with, check this out. Check out the things that you'd add to it, take away from it. We've had 3 sets on Innistrad since this deck was made, or 2. So like more vampires there. I mean, we get vampires pretty much every set anyway. So check that out. I think adding Ozolith would be a good shot if you have the money.
Yeah.
Looking more into creatures or anything that's like, oh, when you add a +1 to this thing or that thing or whatever, like whenever you create a new counter, like do X, Y, or Z. Like there's so many ways you could go with this deck that sometimes you just need a place to start. Sometimes you just need a list and then add from there. So check it out. I've added in the description. But I think, take this deck where you want to go. I think that there are the bones of many decks in this deck, and that's the problem with it.
Well, the joy with Vampire Typal. Vampire's been around long enough that you can target it into one specific. If you want to go Vampire +1/+1 counters, you can. If you want to do Vampire, just straight up Vampire recursion, you can. If you want to do Butcher of Malakir style of vampires, you can do that too. There's all sorts of options. So whatever you want to do. So,
but yeah, I think that's really all we've got time for today. We'll be back next week, hopefully with a new episode, a new thing to talk about. Probably not a deck list, but we'll see. We'll see where we're at next week. Hope that you join us. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. If you're watching on YouTube, which if you are, press that subscribe button. You get to see all the cards we talked about, or at least most of them. But that's going to do it. Because we're Temple of False Pod, where decks are not optimized, but our plays sure as heck are fun. I'm Andy.
I'm Bruce.
Again, thank you for tuning in. Play some Magic for me, and may your 5th land be the Temple.
Bye!
Wait. Before you go, I just wanted to say thank you for listening. You can reach out to us via email at falsepodmtg@gmail.com or on Twitter @falsepodmtg. Bruce is @manaburned, and I'm @AndyWeekend, though you'll definitely notice I use the podcast Twitter far more often. Now that we've got you here, make sure you subscribe, rate us on whatever podcast platform you use. It helps us out. It gets us more reach. Subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. Like a video there. leave some comments for more casual enjoyment. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back with some more timeless discussions about all things casual. So come hang out, and may your fifth land be the temple. Bye-bye. Should I do my best, Bruce? Bye!